Wartime Traumas and Its Effects, Ray Robles. Wartime Traumas and Its Effects, Ray Robles.
In 1920 and 21, two people provided a port of entry for this little one to come into this beautiful planet we call Earth. They themselves made their entry and exit via this little town in the Mojave Desert here in California. Bureau host, fellow Toastmasters, Ted and Connie both grew up in this little town of Barstow. You know, the one on the way to Sin City off the I-15. Their parents, both paternal and maternal grandparents themselves, were from the cities of Chihuahua and Aguascalientes in the old heart of Mexico. Both my grandparents worked in the railroad industry, the up and coming boom industry at the time. And they eventually migrated to Barstow. And why not? After all, the Harvey House had just been built, a beautiful railroad hub where there were this beautiful, gorgeous cafe, lodging, and maintenance facilities for folks coming into California and other states beyond. Well, to the point, Dad entered the Army Air Corps in 1942, and after being washed out as a P-38 pilot because his education or lack thereof caught up with him. So he ended up being a ground soldier instead. Not a big problem, and he was a participant to the invasion of Normandy. While he didn't talk a whole lot about it, he ended up taking several rounds into his legs in that particular invasion. He ended up being in the foxhole for 3 days before he was finally rescued by medical personnel. He ended up going into a small make-do hospital there in France, and eventually was shipped out to San Francisco to the Army Letterman Hospital, which to this day, of course, is shut down. Well, I can no longer say to this day, but years back, he actually feared thunder during rainstorms. Well, you know, it does rain in Southern California, right? Anyway, this impacted his suppressed memory of large incoming rounds on that cold beach prior to his nearly unavoidable fate. After being recovered by medical personnel, again, he ended up in the Southern California area. Not a bad deal because he actually grew up in Barstow, as well as Connie, my mom. They dated for a while before he went to the service. When he got out, they eventually married. And they ended up going to Tehachapi, a small community, because he lived in Los Angeles for a while, but he had a difficult time with the excessive amount of people. So shortly thereafter, they moved to Tehachapi, and I was born. Though we escaped any physical harm, in 1952, there was a massive earthquake in Tehachapi that destroyed our house. Now, fortunately, we weren't there at the time. We were visiting relatives in Los Angeles. But I think this was the first incident that triggered what we know now as PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. At that particular time, there was not a name for it, but now, of course, we know it as PTSD. Obviously, I can't speak for the thousands of other returning vets that survived, yet the study of those experiences and dealing with trauma can often lead to issues affecting not only themselves, but those around them as well. The tendency for many who have undergone these and other traumatic events, who have not sought treatment to mask or deal with those events, they ended up dealing with drugs, alcohol, countless other potential destructive type of activities, anything to mask the pain and avoid unintentionally the healing process. The way of dealing and healing is another speech in itself for another time, of course. Ultimately, Dad's way of dealing was in a bottle, a Budweiser bottle. He would sometimes go with other vets to nearby bars and self-medicate, and he loved to rumble. Don't know why those guys love to fight, but that they did. He in particular loved to get into rumble-tumble fistfights, sometimes coming home with a black eye. If he would leave his aggressions at these bars, all would have been okay, but he often brought them home with him and ended up drinking many a time throughout the weekends. My mom dealt with this for several years. She had friends from her school days that encouraged her to stay strong and hang in there or leave him. Divorce was not as common as it is today, of course, and yet she contemplated doing so anyway. Instead, she succumbed to leukemia at the age of 42, leaving my siblings and I to fend for ourselves, support each other, and of course, take care of each other. We did so. Our dad was there, of course, but he went through his grieving process and wasn't always there for us. Fortunately for myself, we did have my siblings, and we took care of each other very, very well. Thank you very much. We've all encountered setbacks, some more than others. The implications often being more than we care to endure, yet it's up to us to make a decision that life happens for us and not to us. In every event, there is a purpose, a reason, or a lesson to be learned. We're all doing the best that we can. When we know better, we do better. And I beg, may we all strive to know better. Through the events my dad and countless others have gone through, I've learned the value of reaching out for help and the strength and endurance of forgiveness. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you. And as Bob Hope would say, thanks for the memories. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Very thoughtful and sharing. I love the fact that we can do that in Toastmasters. We have the opportunity to share those deep feelings, and that's the reason for this meeting.